Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're incredibly excited about the launch of our new guidance on learning together, a guide for feminist practice in violence against women and girls research collaborations. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. Next slide, please. So we started discussions on producing this document almost a year ago when we were fortunate enough to attend the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women grantee conference. And it started when we were just chatting with one another about some of the power imbalances that we see throughout the research process between researchers and activists. So in response, we thought it would be helpful to develop feminist informed guidance on how these partnerships can look. And that means upholding the agency of both activists and researchers, value all knowledge and skills from both researchers and activists, and promote empathy and respect throughout the research partnership process. And so this webinar is really designed to launch and share some of the experiences and thoughts coming out of the guidance. Next slide, please. So we want this meeting to be as fun and interactive as possible. Of course, we are always limited by technology and time, but we have shared a Padlet in the chat if you want to introduce yourself and tell us what inspires you around your work on ending violence against women and girls. Please use the chat feature for questions and comments. Any unanswered questions that we don't get to during this webinar, we can respond to in a follow-up that will include a recording and the PowerPoint from this session. Next slide, please. So I'm really excited to introduce the panelists for today. We have Janet from Raising Voices represented, who will be speaking soon. We have Wangechi from CREW, Dina from AWDF, and I am Leah with Raising Voices. But I also want to acknowledge all of the amazing women who have not only input, reviewed, drafted the document, but also helped put this event together. So as you know, there's a lot of other people behind the scenes who have worked to get this together. So thank you. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief overview. I've been doing the opening and welcome. And next we're gonna hear from Janet on the who, what, and why of activist researcher partnerships, which is taken a bit from the guidance as well as with Janet's personal spin as someone who's worked very closely with researchers as an activist and practitioner. We will have a brief interactive activity following Janet's part. Then we will have two case studies, first from Wangechi on working with researchers, some of the challenges and benefits that she's faced as leading a feminist organization in Kenya. And then we will hear from Dina on how AWDF develops principles of partnering, so what that looks like. And finally, we'll conclude with some folks from SBRI and Raising Voices on next steps. Next slide, please. So I will hand it over to Janet, who's going to go through the who, what, and why of activist researcher partnerships.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah. My name is Janet Nakuti. I work with Raising Voices, based here in Kampala, Uganda. So I'd like to speak quite a little more around the who, what, and why of activist researcher partnerships for this session. Next slide, please. So many questions when we think about activist researcher collaborations. quite a number of questions linger, in our heads. And one of them is, why? Why should we pursue a collaboration, an activist researcher collaboration? There could be so many reasons behind that. But we have outlined, 4 different reasons to kind of give us a sense of, okay, what are the benefits? What would it mean if I decided to pursue an activist researcher collaboration? One of them is generating learning. Different organizations have different capacities, but they also have, different abilities, and they bring on board different ideas and different aspects that could, when combined, bring lots of learning on board and benefit the field of prevention, the field around violence against women and girls programming. So if we have activists collaborating with researchers, there's lots of knowledge that could be generated, lots of ideas, and in so doing, growing the field of VAWG programming. But also because of that, there's lots of credibility that is built for these 2 organizations. So, it's one of the reasons that we look out for activist researcher collaborations. What we do out there, how we, how these organizations relate out with different organizations, the ideas they put across, the relationships they build, but the learning that they generate in the field also help them to grow their credibility. Different other organizations are looking out to actually associate with them, to work with them. And so it's really, really important for activist organizations to pursue. But also in terms of prompting action, what does that mean? There's lots of ideas or learning that is being generated. How do we integrate that to strengthen program? So there will be lots of effective application of the learning that we have generated through these partnerships. There are ideas around, checking on each other, holding each other accountable to ensure that these actions are actually applied or implemented. But there are lots of opportunities that we create. So for example, around the field, there are opportunities of, visibility for these organizations, but there are also opportunities of opening up the field further, in other spaces to different audiences in terms of the ideas that we have generated. So creating more opportunities for activist organizations, but also creating further opportunities for researcher collaborations, so for research organizations. So it's really, really important. Next slide, please. Yeah, but we still ask ourselves, when should we pursue an activist research organization? When is it important? So ideally, organizations, we are not pursuing collaborations for the sake of it. Some of the questions that activist organizations have could be answered internally, as within the organization through program learning, through, program monitoring, but there are others that we may not be able to answer as activist organizations. So thereby the need to create, partnerships. So organizations internally reflect on what their learning goals are, what their learning objectives are. And once it's established that the learning goals within this organization can only be better achieved through partnerships, then it's important that we look out for a collaboration. So yeah, but there are also opportunities for shared learning agenda. What is within this activist organization? What is important? What do we want to learn? What are the needs within the organization? And furthering asking ourselves questions of who do we want to benefit? How do we want to use this learning? And therefore, once we discover that we have a learning agenda internally, then it's important that we reach out for a collaboration. But there are also lots of ideas that come across, especially when there's collaboration between activists and researchers. So if we think that our stakeholders that we work with need to be exposed to, new ideas, for us to grow the field, for us to, be able to understand what is happening in the different communities, then it's important that, we pursue this, but also being able to leverage the strengths of both groups, because each one of them comes with unique and important strengths, either activists or researchers. But one key thing we need to, note is that we need to ensure that, because collaborations have a very huge take on management and staff of the organizations. So ensuring that, we have enough staff, enough resources, but also systems within the organization to manage the partnership processes. Next slide, please. But there are also other questions around who makes a good partner. It's difficult to answer this question because there could be, so many, qualities we are looking out for a research partner. But there are few that we could focus on. One, technical experience. It's important to look out for technical expertise so that our expectations are answered through what we are doing. So for example, this partner you're looking out for, are they conversant with the field? Do they understand the content? But also, do they have experience with research? So especially thinking about them having experience around mixed methods. Are they good at that? But also what, in terms of power dynamics, what does it look like with these partners? Could they be able to understand or be comfortable with the primary language, especially in communities where they are going to work, but also being comfortable with, the different aspects of political, cultural, social aspects of the communities where the collaboration is going to happen. So that's really, really important. But also think about values. Values alignment is really, really important. If for the two organizations, what does it look like? Each organization has written down values that could benefit the relationship. Do these values align with each other, or are we talking at different parallel points? If they are parallel, then we may not benefit from this relationship. So ensuring that, for example, values of respect, and when we talk about respect, we are talking about, respecting the knowledge, we are respecting the ideas, the skills, but also, the technicality, the capacity of the different organizations. But also thinking about open communication or other values like equity, and power within power dynamics within the relationships. So what does it look like? If they are not aligning, we might think of having conversations about those written values so that, we ensure that they align before this partnership takes place, or if it has to be fruitful. But also think about reputation. So here, reputation does not necessarily mean, being famous or, being a large organization, but an organization that should be able to uphold to the values that we have spoken about. And also in terms of, committing to holding relationships together very strongly. And we could do this by speaking to some of the organizations that have built relationships with this research organization to ensure that, check in with how was their relationship, what was it like, when they were working with them? Did they get what they expected? How did they experience power? Between the organizations. In that way, then this could be a reputable organization that any activist organization, could work with. But you also like to speak about funding. What does it look like? Every collaboration needs funding. Without funding, it will be very, very difficult to achieve all the different processes. So thinking about, do we have a secured funding? Does this partner do that? But also, do these partners have opportunities for fundraising further? Because we will need funding over the period of time that we have set. But also, are there opportunities for co-funding between the partners once the relationship is happening? So all those need to be checked to ensure that we are going in a relationship, but we have all these in book and documented, so the relationship is very smooth. Next slide, please. Okay, as I finalize, so what does it mean if we have to have, a collaboration? Activist researcher collaboration need to be formalized. Formalization will help the two organizations, the two entities to operate very smoothly. It will be a guide for them to refer back and check what is happening. So this could be these two organizations developing a contract or developing a memorandum of understanding, depending on what you want to say or how you want to call it. But it will be a formal agreement that will include stuff like around governance. Governance issues are really, really important for any relationship. So these need to be documented, but also spelling out the roles and responsibilities of each partner so that it's very clear right from the start and there's no confusion along the way. So issues around accountability, holding each other accountable or holding yourselves accountable, these will be very, very helpful. What about streamlining communication mechanisms and how conflicts will be resolved over the period of the collaboration? But issues of authorship, intellectual property and data is really, really important because along the way, we'll be able to develop materials, we'll be able to, author some papers, and therefore, what does that mean? Of course, including resources and finances. We therefore need to develop a clear plan. All these will be tools for guidance, tools that will help the partnership to grow, to flourish, but also to, to run smoothly. Once we have all those together, then you definitely enjoy the process together. So that is getting practical. Thank you so much. I will hand you back over to Leah.
Thanks so much, Janet, for that great overview of the who, why, and when of VAWG research partnerships. We are going to move over to a little interactive activity. If we could get to the next slide, please. So I'm not sure, sorry, that text is a little low, but we can share it in the chat. So the question that we want to ask everyone is, what word would best describe your experience of a partnership in a recent research project, either as an activist, program implementer, or a researcher? So we're just going to take about 2 minutes if you want to fill that out. And so if you click on the link provided by Lizzle, you can actually type in the word directly in the link. There's a box for it. But we're also happy to have you share on the chat if that is easier for you, and we can put them in on your behalf. So I'll give it 1 more minute. How are we looking on responses, Lizzle and Morma? Seem like people have had enough time? Great. Okay, well, feel free to, if something else comes up, you can return to that link and add, especially as we go through with the rest of the session. If something else comes to mind, feel free to add any of your reflections to that link. And now I am happy to turn over the session to Wangechi, who's going to talk about, from the activist perspective, working with researchers and some of the challenges and benefits that come with that. So Wangechi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Leah. I really appreciate this session. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody who managed to join this conversation. I see from my end, we're about 81 participants. I think that's really good. Very, very delighted to be here and share some of my experience on challenges, but also look at benefits of working with researchers. So I think we can go to the first slide just to be able to share my thoughts. There? Okay, thank you. I think for me, working for a women's rights organization, and what I have seen that in the recent number of maybe years, we have seen a lot of increase in demand for evidence. And this evidence is looking at either what is working, what is promising, what is not promising, but also what are the lessons that are coming from the work that we are doing on violence against women and girls, but also looking at issues of children. So there's a lot of demand that the work that we do, either on prevention, either on response, that constantly we must be able to demonstrate what a kind of evidence that is coming from this work. Number two, for me, is as an organization, I have managed to work with different organizations when it comes to research. This could be academic institutions. I have also had an opportunity to work with INGOs. I've also had an opportunity also working with individuals, just to be able to look at the work that we are doing, be able to do interviews, to be able to get to the ground and be able to speak to some of the beneficiaries of the people that the women that we have been able to work with, just to be able to see what kind of evidence that is coming from the ground. For me, also, what I also see working with a researcher, I think there is a lot of hierarchy of power that persists between the North and the global South. And why I see this is based in the South, that the work that we're doing, a lot of the evaluations, a lot of research that is being done is more being done by the global North. And for me, then there are the issues of power. And what I have observed that there's no equal power. And I'm so delighted, because I think the document that we are sharing today, or the document that we'll be moving forward with, hopefully, that we can be able to look at and reflect when we engage as Global South and Global North, what are the power dynamics in there, in terms of including issues of budget, who is speaking to the work. And a lot of organizations like ourselves, we have felt that we are only at the space where we are providing data, who are the people who benefited from this program. But in terms of acknowledging the work and the weightlifting that is done by the women's rights organization, that doesn't come out very strongly. When it comes to acknowledgement, when it comes to co-authoring even the study, I think there are issues of power. And I'm happy, because I think moving forward, probably those are some of the things that we need to reflect as we engage in the global North and South. And then finally, for me, is the opportunity change that we have here. How do we move forward? Looking at what is already existing, how do we change how we do this work? How do we have a better conversation? How do we become more open? How do we become more transparent? But also, how do we also talk about this power and how it's shared? So that for me has been my experience. And I'm hoping that in the next slide, I'm going to share with you also what are the benefits as a women's rights organization. And for me, I would say that for research, I found it more benefiting as an organization. One is that the work that we're doing every other day, we are being questioned. Show us what are the results in terms of what is working, what is not working, so that we can also be able to develop models that are working, either to do it as a small scale and then be able to upscale that. So for me as an organization, it has been able to improve our learning in the practice around violence against women and also children and the programming. And also as a result of this is also, we have also been able to deepen our understanding, whether it's work around prevention, but also response. Very, very important that in this era where we are living, it will be very difficult to continue doing work and not showing any form of learning on what is working and what is not working. I think also for me, number two, as an organization, it also helps the organization to be able to challenge and look at what are the subvert traditional knowledge and hierarchy. And why for me this is important, like I said earlier, is a lot of the learnings or a lot of research that is being done for organizations like ourselves based in the South is being done by the Global North organization. So again, very, very important to also look at where else are they been able to do this kind of studies, what have studies been able to show in different parts of the world. And as we implement, implement the work, then it gives us an opportunity to do that reflection. Number three is that also as an organization, it creates a culture of critical reflection and learning that goes within and beyond the partnership. Again, for me, as an organization, a women's rights organization, is that when you embed research in the work constantly as you implement. And right now, I think a lot of development partners have been able to listen that for you to do this work, either on prevention or response, this takes a program for about 4 years or 3 years. And within that period of time, then to be able to infuse very, very critical reflection, learning, so that we don't do the same things just to be able to tick the box. So that, again, is a critical benefit for the organization. And the final one around the benefits is also it enhances the collaboration process, whereby knowledge is co-created and co-owned, other than feeling that there's a lot of maybe data mining or extractive or exploitation that happens within this process. So if it's done in a way that is collaborative, there is equal power, everybody is clear about the roles and their responsibility, it creates a lot of harmony, whereby the organizations feel, yes, this is a collaboration, there is knowledge co-creation, there is a co-ownership, and everybody is at a happy place. But when this is not done, then is on the flip side. And now I'll move on to the next slide, where I'll be speaking about what are some of the challenges that I think we need to look at as organizations that are doing this work. Allow me to start the one on the data mining process. And I speak this again as an organization that is implementing work. I have felt that a lot of organizations or individuals or NGOs that are coming to do this research, there's a lot of data mining. And why I see this is because when I look at what are the responsibilities for organizations based in the South, that they are able to provide, yes, this is the program we implemented. We are able to share the details of what the program was intended to. We're able to link to the beneficiaries. We're able to link to everybody who was involved in the program. And when all this information is finally collated and reduce the data, we then don't become part and parcel of having been part of the research. There is no co-ownership, and there is only a small responsibility that is in there of providing the information. And yet, if this work hadn't been done by this organization, wouldn't even in the first place then be able to get the data. So again, the need that this is the challenge that we have to move away from the data mining process. I think the one that follows is the one on bias, on giving credit and the visibility. And I have seen this especially for academic institutions based in the global North, that when all these women rights organizations do all the weightlifting, you know, they implement the work 3 years down the line, all the credit because university or academic institutions have come and done the research, then they take all the credit, forgetting that if this one work hadn't been done by the women's rights organization, then there wouldn't be then opportunity then to do the study. I think for me moving forward, it will be very, very important to see how do we ensure that we credit and ensure the visibility of the organization. The other one that follows for me that box is about the one size fits solution. Again, I have observed that when these studies are being done, there is lack of listening and learning from the local partners. So if it's a methodology, it can only work on one size, and therefore not acknowledging the local knowledge, not acknowledging the local capacity of the organizations we are working with, or even the beneficiary of the program. So for me, this is a big challenge that when these studies or this research is being said, it can only be one size fit, and really acknowledging or trying to ignore the local knowledge and solution. I think also the researchers, when they come to do the research, there is overstepping of roles by the researchers. And why I say this is because from the word go, there is no clear responsibility on who does what, how is the roles and responsibility going to be shared. So, and even when they are shared, again, there is overstepping. You find the researcher becoming more involved in the program and completely ignoring the women's rights organizations who are already doing the work. And my final one, I guess that's why it's in color pink, is the frequency power dynamic that do exist within these organizations. Organizations in the South are only seen, like their contribution is very, very small when it comes to acknowledging, to ensuring that they remain relevant in this. If there is going to be a negotiation with a development partner on how this work is going to be done, they're brought in at the tail end, meaning that their work that has already, negotiations have already been done, and therefore the organization then feeling we're only coming to the end tail of the bargain. So moving forward, I think the issues of power dynamics are very, very important to be checked. Let's move on to the next slide. That moving forward, for me, the call for
action. Sorry, just noting you have a minute to go. Sorry.
I'm just concluding. For me, the call for action is one, they need to be able to shift the traditional ways of designing and implementing research to be more collaborative. And also for me, the second one is that attention needs to be given into the context, the power relationship, and the final one is the difference interests, so that then people and organizations can feel that this is a partnership, and a partnership that is mutual, has respect, and we are able to work together. So thank you. My final slide, the last one, Leah, the final one, is just saying that nothing about me without me. Thank you. I appreciate the time. Thank you, Leah. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Wangechi. That was really there's so much richness in your presentation, and I think a lot of issues that we tried to address within our guidance, especially based on conversations with you earlier and your experience. And so we hope that some of these challenges with power dynamics, ownership over data, understanding that, you know, these partnerships are not a one-way street where it's just researchers giving capacity to activist organizations, but that it really is a two-way street where we have so much to learn from one another is so important. So I am going to hand it over to Dina now from AWDF, who is going to speak about developing these principles of partnering.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah. Yeah, so thinking about principles of partnering in a research collaboration, so both activists and researchers, I thought about how to do this, and I just decided to use some of my experiences both as a researcher but also as an implementer in some of the contexts. And next slide, and that's why I decided to call these some of the notes to keep. So really things I've picked along and what I've also had colleagues reflect on. I think that, so how I'm going to approach this is really not giving you the principles, but just talking about what you need to keep in mind as you're thinking about developing principles for collaboration. And a lot of it is going to border with what Wangechi and Janet have shared, but more from a how-to kind of perspective and probably what we've learned along the way. So the first thing, and I'm going about the PowerPoint slide in clockwise. So looking at the core strategy. So what's your overall strategy when you're thinking about partnerships? And here it's important to think through motivations, right? So what motivates you as an individual organization coming into this space? And for instance, some organizations might have long-term, while others have really short-term things that they want to achieve, yeah, along the way. So it's important that at this point, that's clear. So it's not really to say one is better than the other, but it's important that they are on the table and they're harmonized and people know how to go about them. The other thing also is, so I call this process versus outcome. And I think Wangechi touched quite a bit about this, but it's more to say that look at partnerships as a process, as a relationship, as, you know, something that you're not coming in to say we want to tick this box. So we're partnering and we want to produce maybe a paper on violence against women prevention, but rather we want to nurture ourselves as people who are grounded in the methodology, who can be able to add value onto what violence against women prevention looks like several years later. And I think the important thing here to note is most of the time, if you start with the outcome or the result, and then you work backwards in terms of process, you're going to miss quite a lot of things. And yet, I could guarantee that if you organize the steps, then you're much more likely to achieve whatever outcome that you're looking for. I think also that the other thing which is really important is value addition clarification. And this has also been touched by Janet, but it's important at this point to, so again, start with yourself as a partner, think about your comparative advantage, and then think about what you're bringing to the table. Out of the big you, what aspects of you are you bringing to the table? Are you a community mobilizer? Are you strong with some of the methodologies that are working in the field? And if you're a researcher, are you coming in to say, I am strong with methods and I'm going to be supporting you on this? Or once these are clear, then it's you know, more easier for you to be able to know who is dealing with what. And I think Wangechi talked more about the power dynamics. I think that clarifying value addition is one of the ways in which you can guard against that, because it becomes easy not to overstep, but also to fully acknowledge and recognize what everybody is bringing onto the table. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is defining approaches and methodologies. And this is really, again, big picture, because it's important. So for instance, in the context of violence against women and girls prevention, for you to just check within yourselves if you have the bigger approach, do you agree on what you think are the drivers of violence against women and girls? And I say this because we found ourselves in spaces where some of the research and implementation kind of collaborations have been taken back by conversations around, for instance, male involvement. And you need to think about what that means as a feminist organization or as an organization within this space. And once you clarify that, it becomes quite easier. But also broadly, sometimes it's whether you are taking a community approach or whether you're, sometimes it's, we want to interview this category of people, but then what the implementing organization is telling you is that the drivers of violence against teenage girls have to do with the wide community. And then your methodology and the tools you've designed are more individual. How are you going to harmonize those kinds of things? But also broadly, and I'll talk about this a bit more under materials and products, but it's also at this stage, it's important to think about, are you doing action research, or are you, coming in to say, we want to produce some scholarly kind of products? And at this point, you start to have the conversation around what products will you be producing and who is going to be doing what at that point. So I put this here, continually review and reflect, and it borders with self-care. I'll talk about that later, but the important thing here is you have to continually reaffirm values, continually reaffirm purpose. So while you're coming into a partnership, it's important for you to think about how you are going to communicate. How are you going to talk about what I'm calling the sticky issues? And I think this border with what Wangechi was talking about. So for instance, some of the partnerships are already designed in some way. You have a prime partner who is coming down to, identify an implementing partner that they're going to, and it could be either way. So the prime partner could actually be the activist organization or or even the organization either in the global south or in the global north. But there is already a top-down approach there, and it's important for you to start talking about what that means. But also thinking about what forces each of you bring to the table. So who controls what resources? Some of the people in the partnership control more team members. You have more equipment, you have, and at the end of the day, these are some of the resources that are maybe resulting into, part of the power dynamics at the end of the day. And so when it comes to materials and products and how they're going to be used, I think that it's important, like we've all said, so Janet, Wangechi, just to say that you have to envision what you're going to be producing at the end of the day. But most importantly, if there are products, if you're going to say we are going to produce papers or policy briefs, who is going to write them? And what does that mean? What does that mean in the sense, and in one of the examples that I have is that we've had scenarios where the implementing organization probably is strong on community mobilization. So that's what they're bringing. They can do the community stakeholder mappings, translations, and things like that. And then the research institution is the author. So they write the papers. And at the end of the day, that does affect attribution. It affects who gets named on the paper. And you start to struggle around, we actually contributed quite a lot as the field-based organization, but the question that is on the table is, are you a first author? Are you a second author? Because then you're not, from how it's designed. So I think that these are some of the things that need to be clarified. And then around here is things to do with intellectual property and data use and who has access to data sets. I think we've also had experiences where researchers have control over the data sets and it becomes really difficult. So I think finally, just to say that partnerships, I say that their currency is trust. And by that, I mean that we have to think about honesty from the start. And what has worked most is where you are not handed down a research concept, but rather you are working jointly to be able to develop the concept. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Dina. Again, really, really important points to keep in mind, and hopefully some of which we tried to address in our guidance. And AWDF has also been working really hard on some similar guidance to help strengthen VAWG prevention for African women's organizations. So we're really excited to see when those are complete. And now we're going to return back to that activity that we did earlier. If we can go to the next slide and click on the link here. So based on what you have all submitted to the Mentimeter poll, can we click on that? If it's working, you might need to do a new share. Sometimes Zoom, yeah, does that. Sure. And while we're waiting, I also want to, Dina, you included self-care as well. And I think that was, can never be overlooked and is so important. So thank you for that. So here is our little word cloud based on what feedback and experiences you all have had in engaging in a research partnership. So it seems like there's, it can be challenging, but there's also opportunities for learning, it's enriching, stronger, I'm seeing powerless. So some of these we can see sort of reflect some of the ideas that have been shared from panelists throughout the session about the benefits and disadvantage or challenges of working in these partnerships. So, friendship, but then there's also underappreciated. So we really want to think about how can we hopefully use this guidance and other tools available so that we have more of these positive leading words that really do uphold mutual respect and balance power throughout these relationships. So thank you so much for sharing. We can share this word cloud as well when we are done, when we share out the recording. So I am going to hand it over to Lori and Anika to close us out.
Thanks so much, Leah. And really, thank you all so much for joining. Because we're in like a webinar, there were too many participants to do a meeting. So that's why you're only seeing some of us. So we're really sorry we can't see all of you, but are thrilled that we can see you in the chat. And some of you have contributed to the Padlet. So that's also fun as well. So thank you very, very much for participating and joining. Even though we can't see each other, one of our real intentions of this work and our continued collaborations across activists and researcher perspectives is to really build the community together and to really be able to foster trust and collaboration with each other. And we feel the more we know each other, as people and also professionally, of course, the more that trust that Wangeshi and Dina and Janet all spoke about really, really can be built. Collaboration is complex, as we've all heard. I think we've all been in some that are not so lovely and others that are very, very lovely. They're complex. There's a lot of power dynamics. There's always ego involved individually as well as organizationally, which doesn't always help processes. But we really feel with the intention to be open and to really come to this with eyes wide open and being able to say, actually, like being very self-reflective and understanding where our own hangups and biases and dynamics might lie, and being willing to have those very difficult, right? Like there's no easy way around it. These are difficult, often painful conversations to have, and yet they get us to a better place if we have them. If we don't, we sort of stay stuck in the same sort of loop that maybe we've been in before that have been hurtful to many people. So we're really feeling that, you know, the intention with this paper and with this guide is to really help people use it as a living document, to really open up some of the conversations, to not then be sort of caught off guard at the end of the day, being like, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't know this was going to happen, but to really lay out some of the different topics and types of issues that generally emerge from the complexity of research activists collaborations, and really figure out how to move forward in a better way. So talking about collaborations, I also want to really just, Anika is going to thank the whole team that's participated, but I really have to thank SVRI. I think, you know, processes, products matter, impact matters, what comes out of collaborations matter. But for us, and we have felt that with SVRI, the process matters more than really what comes out of it at the end of the day. Who cares if you have a wonderful paper if it doesn't come out of a process that really feels good. And the hallmarks of this collaboration have really been that trust that we were all talking about, a real generosity of spirit, and it was a pleasure. So we feel like that motivates us to really continue to reach across and make sure that we can build better relationships. So we just want to really encourage groups to use this as a living document. We also do want to flag it specifically, the document that's coming out of AWDF. It's called Generating Knowledge and Evidence on Prevention of Violence Against Women, and it's an introductory guide for African women's organizations. This is forthcoming shortly. Several of us have been helping and supporting along the way, and it's really going to be an important, I think, and helpful publication as well. And then we also have other ways of contributing, which and keeping this conversation going together as a community. And I'm going to hand over to Anika for that and some other things. And just so that, you know, folks know, we can't, because of the webinar situation we're in, we can't like have people raise their hand and ask questions, but you can put anything you would like in the chat. And because time is running short now, we probably won't be able to get to them now, but we are very, very keen to keep this conversation going. And Anika, so we will answer any questions that you have, and we'll send a follow-up email, but Anika is going to also share some other ways of engaging in the conversation. So over to you, Anika.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and thanks everyone who's been part of this webinar. My name is Anika. I'm here on behalf of the SVRI. And just to build on what Laurie said, yes, this is certainly not the only conversation that we want to be having. We're hoping this is the beginning of a lot more conversations and open conversations on this topic. And I've already seen in the chat that a couple people noted that having more examples would be helpful. And so that's actually, we want to reach out to all of you. If you have an example of an activist researcher partnership that has gone particularly well, or that you think would be great for a case study, we're hoping to have a blog or a blog series, depending on how much information we get on this topic. So please do reach out with your case examples to the SVRI. If I can ask more, Lisa, I'll just put the SVRI email address in the chat. So it's svri@svri.org. And you can share those with us, and then we'll get back to you and see in what way we can use those examples to learn from them and build more positive partnerships. Also, if you have any other publications, SVRI is very interested in building the evidence for the field, but also making sure that we elevate practice-based knowledge. And so please share publications with us so we can share it more broadly with the field via our platform if that would be of interest to you. again, you can contact us at that SVRI email address. And yes, I just also want to acknowledge that working on this resource was one great example, we think, of an activist research collaboration that was both a great experience and that bore fruit that we hope will be of use in the field. And it's the kind of partnership where everyone who was involved really valued kindness and generosity. And this alignment of values is what made the partnership really successful, both in process and in outcome. And, you know, there was just so much joy involved in working on this. And I really want to acknowledge that, the really incredible Raising Voices team that we could work with, but also that it made the partnership experience and product really fantastic, and that they don't always have to be challenging, horrible experiences. It is possible to have a partnership that has a lot of joy and enjoyment in it. And so I also just want to say the SVRI and Raising Voices are really striving to contribute to ending violence against women and violence against children through building evidence on effective ways to address these types of violence and also their causal risk and protective factors. But we recognize that neither researchers nor activists alone can build the evidence or implement it at scale, and that's why partnerships are so essential. So we hope that what we've shared can, help the field to really promote these partnerships and make them enriching experiences for everyone, and to be thriving and positive experiences, because this will ultimately serve the best interests of women and children everywhere, we think. So on behalf of the partnership, I'd really like to express our gratitude and appreciation for all the contributions to the paper. So it's several authors, multiple rounds of review and contributions, and also several reviewers who did an amazing job of contributing and really enriching and strengthening the product that you see. And then big thank you to our guests on this webinar, Dina and Wangeshi. And a very, very big thank you to our production team, Liesel, Morma, and Angelica, who all took care of a lot of things in the background that really gave us quite a smooth experience today. And then finally, we'd like to thank all of you who took time to join the webinar today and contributed to the discussions here. And remember that we're hoping that these discussions will continue and that we can build on them. And yeah, so we wish you all happy, equitable, kind, and fruitful partnerships in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Congratulations.